Well, yeah. I mean, no matter where I sit, it's going to be the case, right? I could. It's just that I want to be able to get to anybody quickly. So, ideally, I'd sit right in the center, but that's going to be, that'd be always be in the shot. That's why I'm sitting here, so they can adjust themselves first, early. Seriously. You just never thought of it that way, right? It was doing what?
We'll host you the second one. Girls are tough here. We lost 6 girls from teams and other schools. They've gone to Easter.
We're going to start in around 5 minutes, so if you can take your coffee early.
I got 2 presentations. You got both of those?
I don't have anything yet.
So you're not running the projector?
He's running the projector, but it's got to be on your computer.
Who's running the projector?
The guy right there with a
Jeff. We've talked on the phone, but never met him again. Nice seeing you, Josh. Lovely.
I'm going to try and get this meeting going. The sooner you let me speak, the sooner we all can get out of here and see whatever football game one wants to watch. So, my name's Paul Schlesinger. I'm commissioner of the league. Want to welcome you all back. It's been a few years since we've had a league meeting due to COVID, due to off years, due to a whole host of reasons. So it's good to be back in one room, be able to see you all, and kind of give you an overall of where the league has been, where we're moving, and hopefully getting back on track to where we were pre-COVID. I want to thank you all for coming, first of all. Sure, there's plenty of things one wants to do on a Saturday, whether family, football, raking leaves, or whatever else. So thank you, and I've been promised that we'll be out of here at 2 o'clock. Gives me an honor from one who was commissioner without anybody else backing me up. So for the last few years, I've been able to have a team with me helping out. Assistant commissioners here today, Rick Gruen, Jeff Melville, Will Harris, Coach Emeritus, I guess. Is that your title? Chris Van Hatcher, and somebody new to the table for the past year or so, Ken Mason, who takes care of electronics, because I have been promised not to even get close to anything electronic. Another person that isn't here yet, hopefully will be here, is Tom Hoffert, president of the Oregon Lacrosse Official Association, and also Coach Steve Curry, football coach at Lake Oswego. And he might be a little bit late for some reason last night that I won't go into at all. Looking at whatever else I need to go over. One other thing, I'll introduce our guest speaker, Coach Corey, and hopefully give him justice without screwing up his resume. Coach Curry graduated from Oregon State University in 1980, was on football scholarship there for 4 years. He played in the Canadian Football League for a year, and then soon afterwards started coaching with his father, Dick Corey, in the USFL. He and I have some similarities. One key thing, and it's a rarity, of being able to work with one's father. I worked with my father up until he passed away for over 30 years. So I do know what it's like having not just a father figure, but a father to work with. I think that's about where the similarities between Coach Curry and I end. He's well traveled, Boston, New Orleans, Portland, and worked on that for several years. He then joined the University of Pittsburgh staff and was there for 3 years before bringing his family out and back to Oregon, where he's raised his 3 kids. He took the coaching job at Lake Oswego intent on being there for a year, and has now been there for close to 30 years, 31 to be exact. I don't remember or know his win-loss record, but one can say that the wins definitely outnumber his losses. He will be speaking shortly, dealing with sportsmanship issues and dealing with high school sports in general. I think you all have the agenda in front of you. If not, there are copies here. After I get done, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Melville to talk about our revised SOPs, sportsmanship issues, and other items. Coach Curry will follow Jeff. Tom Hoffert, chair of the Officials Association, will talk. Jeff will be back. Will Harris will discuss calendar. If Joe Alexander shows up, he is our treasurer. If not, I'll cover a few brief things for him. We're looking at putting out a survey for you all to get back to us as leadership to see what we're doing right, what we're not doing, and how do we make our league better. And then if we have time, some Q&A at the end, and as promised, get everybody out by 2 o'clock. Again, thank you all for taking the time Saturday to be here to learn, to talk about OHSLA and the upcoming 2023 season. Again, thank you, and I'll turn it over to Jeff. Oops, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Rick Ruin. Good to see everybody. The one thing I wanted to talk about right now is conference coaches reps. These positions are critically important, and we have some vacancies. I want to introduce our coaches reps, but each conference is represented by 2 coaches within your conference. I've got, from the Three Rivers League, I've got Coach Kurt right here. Mark Flood from West Lynn is our other coach's rep. He's ill today and not here. From the Metro Conference, where's Coach Cochran? Okay, head coach. And new to it also is Coach Dallin. Chad, great to see you. Columbia, we have Dennis, where you at? Okay, we have a vacancy in Columbia. We hope that one of you will, if you're here from Columbia, reach out to myself or to Dennis, and I'd love to talk to you about being a coach's rep. From the Pacific Conference is Paul Lardy. Where you at, Paul? Paul here? Okay. We do have a vacancy as well in the Pacific Conference, so hopefully we get that filled. North Valley, we've got Sean Latrakis. Coach, you here? Okay, perfect. And new to the coaches rep ranks is Jody Story. Great to have you. So we're good there. Southwest, Don Lindsay. Okay, we need a representative from the Southwest as well. And what's that? Okay, perfect. What was his name? Oh, that's right. Perfect. That's right. And last is Luke Hansen down at Summit in High Desert, and love to get a rep from High Desert as well. The importance of the conference reps is each year, particularly after each season, the board gets together, reviews the SOPs. We get those out to the conference reps for feedback, and hopefully the conference reps are reaching out to all the other coaches within their respective conferences to give input. It's easier to get input from 16 instead of 48 or 50 plus coaches, so better to do it that way. All input is important at any time, but working through the coaches' reps is a good way to get our communication disseminated down throughout the league, as well as have your comments, input be brought to us through the coaches' reps. The other function of the coaches' reps is to update your conference SOPs, which are used for setting the playoffs and how each conference determines its playoff representatives, whether you do a round robin mini tournament or home and home. But again, that comes through the coaches' reps to update the conference SOPs. And most importantly, it's all important, but just feedback. You know, we can't do what we do as a board without, you know, taking your interests and concerns, issues, opportunities, whatever they are, brought to our attention. And usually it's nice to have, as you all meet as a conference, you know, in the off season, during the season, you know, being able to share your information back up to us is what we need to do a better job of, and that's through a robust conference rep group. So anyway, I'll leave it there. So thank you all very much, and I'll turn it over to Jeff.
I'm standing up at the podium. Even though I don't need the speaker, we'll be all right. Okay, hi everybody. How you doing this morning? Thank you for being here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jeff Melville. I've been an assistant commissioner with OHSLA for, I think this is my 5th or 6th season with the league. I've also worked at Summit High School as kind of a program director and puppeteer for about 15 seasons. So I'm familiar with how the league works, and am really proud of this group of leaders that OHSLA has in place right now in terms of getting us through the pandemic. It was a tough couple of years there. We lost the 2020 season altogether. We cobbled together a 2021 compressed season, which was fairly Herculean in its work. We're back to semi-normal in 2022, but what our objectives as a leadership organization for this league are to continue to operate as normal, but also to grow the game. In other words, I remember when, before I came on the board, we had 52 teams in Oregon. We're now hovering right around 41 or 42. And so, you know, if we're going to earn legitimacy here in the state, whether that be from the OSAA or just the strength of our own organization, we need to grow the number of teams that are playing our game. There's some target areas for us, specifically Southern Oregon, Medford, that area. We've never had a team from down there. It's kind of time for those guys to get it going. And a lot of our resources moving forward are about growing the game. One kind of neat thing is that Burns, Harney County, is coming back into the league. So they were here. They've been gone for what, Ricky? 8, 9 years? 3 years. I'm sorry. How time flies, right? How time flies. How time flies. Sorry. And so, but Burns is coming back. Okay, so that's a real, they're going to start as a JV program in the spring, but that's a really neat thing for us, is to see a place where, lacrosse sort of was not as big a thing as it is now. They've got a youth program that has supported some growth, and it's just really neat to see a team as isolated as the folks out in Burns coming back into the high school league. So Rick, welcome back to OHSLA. We're really happy you're here, and I'm so sorry, 3 years out of the league. So, I'm here to talk about sportsmanship, and we have a sportsmanship problem in the world, in the USA, in Oregon, and at Oregon High School Lacrosse Association. And if you read the news at all and you look at I saw something the other day where they tore down a soccer stadium in a country after a game, right? The fans rushed the field, there were numerous deaths, they tore down the stadium. You hear all the time around the country about issues. Also in the state of Oregon, I talked to a football official the other day that they've had 9 high school coaches suspended or ejected from football games this season, and they're not even done. So there's an issue of sportsmanship, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail here in just a minute. I wanted to push pause, so I'm sending around a sign-in sheet just so we can track who's here and who we need to disseminate this information to who couldn't make it for whatever reason. I know it's great to see a lot of your faces, but I know we're missing some. So if you'd please legibly complete the sign-in sheet so I can record who's here and we can make note of that. So thanks for doing that for us. So again, we have a sportsmanship problem. If you go to the next slide, Ken, there's some things up here where the mayor of a city was ejected from his high school daughter's basketball game after threatening a referee, right? A volleyball official followed off the court by a coach shouting obscenities. A referee was assaulted and knocked unconscious during a basketball tournament. A student from opposing school in the stands shouting racist comments at a high school basketball player on the court. Another game in another state, inappropriate chants were made against opposing teams and players on the court. And poor parent behavior in the stands led a Central New York Youth Basketball League to end their season early. So there's a couple of pieces of that. We have a game here that is the creator's game. There is a culture here of appreciation for the game and the players and what we've been given. I mean, when you go back to Native American times, this game was given to us by the Creator. And unsportsmanlike behavior deteriorates our respect for that. I mean, not only is it about respecting each other, respecting players, respecting opponents, but it's about the game we've been given. It's not designed for unsportsmanlike conduct, regardless of the level of frustration. So if you go to the next slide, are you guys all familiar with NFHS, the National Federation of High School Associations? Basically, that's the overriding board that supports all of the high school associations. So Oregon School Activities Association is a member of NFHS. So all of the sports we play, the rules emanate from NFHS, okay? Now, OSAA in Oregon puts their own additional spin on those things about member schools and about what you're doing and those kinds of things. But there's some communications coming out from NFHS that I wanted to share with you. Pretty basic stuff that kind of goes back to what I was talking about an appreciation for the creator's game. Sportsmanship is defined as the qualities of behavior that are characterized by generosity and genuine concern for others. This is from NFHS, by the way. One of the significant goals of education-based high school sports and activities is helping the 12 million plus individuals in these programs to become responsible citizens. And so as coaches, as much frustration as we may feel on the sidelines of a game for whatever reason, it's our obligation as educators and teachers and guardians of this sport to conduct ourselves in a sportsmanlike manner. Because of concerns that unsporting behavior in education-based athletics has increased in the past year, the NFHS has made sportsmanship the #1 point of emphasis in all sports for the 2022-23 season. Again, I alluded to the ejections in high school football that happened this year, okay? High school, the Officials Association that manages high school football has put a line in the sand saying that if there is inappropriate behavior from the sidelines, independent from what's going on the field, you know, a kid can have an unsportsmanlike call, and that's a penalty. But if it's emanating from the bench, the coach gets a warning. After the first warning, he's ejected. Okay, that's to the level of how the NFHS is addressing this unsportsmanlike issue. Okay, we're not there yet, and we hope we don't have to get there. In other words, those are going to be conversations between our board and the Oregon Lacrosse Association, but Oregon Lacrosse Officials Association, excuse me. Those are conversations that are going to happen between now and the season, but we'd like to nip this in the bud here in this room, okay? Oregon High School Lacrosse Association saw a 167% increase in unsportsmanlike conduct penalties in 2022. Now, 21 was a compressed season, but we received comments, so I don't know if you know this, but after every game where anything controversial has happened, we, as board members of Oregon High School Lacrosse, receive a report from the officials. What penalties were called, what happened, was anyone ejected? We get about a paragraph, and sometimes two, about what happened during that game. And I will tell you that it was embarrassing to read some of those this year. It was embarrassing in terms of the kind of behavior that emanated from some players around the state. Not all players, but some. And so I think you guys in our shoes would have felt the same way. Did that really happen? Did a coach actually tell an official, that's the worst game I've ever seen officiated in my life, right? It's just not appropriate behavior. Coaches, assistant coaches, student athletes, and fans are all part of the problem. It's happening in the stands. It's happening among players, assistant coaches, and coaches. Now, when you talk about the effects of the pandemic on high school athletes, it's been significant, right? The 2020 seniors completely lost their season. The 21 seniors missed their junior season. Their lives are in turmoil right now, and the level of frustration is very high. And I believe that's one of the reasons you're seeing these unsportsmanlike incidents increase. There's a lot of frustration. There's more road rage than ever. There's more confrontations at the coffee shop because your coffee wasn't. I mean, it's just everybody's a little bit on edge in a post-COVID world. And we get that. I understand that. But we, as leaders in the lacrosse community, need to rise above that. One of the big concerns, if you read through the unsportsmanlike discussions at NFHS, or there was an article in the, what do we call the paper here? The Oregonian, right? And the Tribune, okay? The issue that's happening with sports these days, including high school football in Oregon, is they can't retain officials. So an official that's berated at a game, an official that is treated poorly by coaches, assistant coaches, players, and fans, right? Those officials are saying, to heck with it. It's not worth $56 a game or $79 a game for me to put up with this, and they're leaving. Tom will tell you a little bit later that our number of officials is dwindling. We have had to, as a league, there are times where we have too many games scheduled in a day, and we have to tell people, sorry, you can't play that day because we've already got too many games and we're out of refs. We don't have the officials to do that. So the bigger issue beyond the character issue and beyond the protecting the culture keeper of lacrosse is that we're not going to have officials. I understand this, and again, this is secondhand information, but I understand the shortage of football officials in Oregon. They can't play all the varsity games on a Friday night. They've got to play varsity games on Tuesdays and Wednesdays because they don't have the officials. So you got officials working a Tuesday night game and a Friday night game just to get the games in. And if we get in a similar situation where we lose our officials, it's going to cost everybody more. We're going to have to restrict the number of games you can play. It's not a good scenario if you look out into the future. Okay. Okay, so NFHS says that everyone is responsible for good sportsmanship. Good sports win with humility, lose with grace, and do both with dignity. It takes the efforts of everyone every day to ensure sportsmanship remains one of the top priorities in education-based activity programs. And I think, you know, in our society today, when you look at club soccer and club lacrosse and club hockey, there is such an emphasis on winning and success that I am guilty, tend to lose perspective on the sportsmanship side of this. As leaders and coaches, what we're doing is creating good citizens out of our players, men with character, men willing to give back to the game. And if we allow this unsportsmanlike trend to continue, the next generation of lacrosse leaders is going to look different than what it looks like in this room right now. It all comes down to coaching. If coaches act in a sportsmanlike manner, their behavior sets the tone for players, spectators, and others. If coaches, however, are constantly complaining about the decision of contest officials, spectators are more likely to do the same. Okay? I will be the first one to admit that, and I think Tom would tell you the same thing, that we have a pool of officials that are pretty good. We have, you know, it's like anything else, right? There's a group of them that are fantastic. There's a group that's still learning, okay? But we have to have that group that's still learning to be able to schedule games and play lacrosse. I don't know if you've, any of you have contact with anybody on the girls' side, but there is not one girls lacrosse official in Central Oregon. They pay like $7 grand a year to have officials travel over to Central Oregon to ref their games. We cannot afford to get into that cycle. And it starts with the coach, right? It starts with you setting the tone for your assistants, your players, and your spectators. We at Oregon High School Lacrosse and the Oregon Lacrosse Officials Association are going to mirror the emphasis on sportsmanship initiated by the NFHS in 2022-23. I'm going to talk in a little bit about the standard operating procedures, where they are, and the updates that we've done to them here in a little bit. But that's a key piece of reference for you guys. And we've added quite a bit about sportsmanship and quite a bit of essentially consequences for not running a sportsmanlike program. This is on the guys in this room, right? It's up to us to set the tone of sportsmanship. But we at Oregon High School Lacrosse Association want to support you in that. If you need help, there's a lot of training. There is a lot of information out there. There are a lot of opportunities to improve your sportsmanship and tried and true ways to do that, right? There are systems you can put in place that will help you improve your sportsmanship. And if you're struggling with how to do that, if you're like, Jeff, I'm really struggling with a way to do that, we can help you. We are your partners in this, right? We exist as an organization to grow the game, to support the game we love. And at that same time, we feel like we want to be in partnership with you guys. So if there's anything you need from us in terms of turning sportsmanship around or creating a culture of sportsmanship at your school, we can help you do that. So thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys for a focus on sportsmanship moving forward. You want to introduce? Great.
Hi again, Rick Ruin. One of the things I didn't mention before when I talked to you about the coaches reps is my background. I was a longtime coach at Lake Oswego and retired in 2019. And when I took over at Lake Oswego, I think it was in 2015, the Lake Oswego lacrosse program was in shambles. And you know, part of what I was asked to do in taking on that assignment was to rebuild the program? How do we bring a program back to prominence? How do we make it back to being a good quality program in the state of Oregon, and in Lake Oswego having to compete against Lake Ridge, which had a very established, consistent program year in and year out. Stability is hugely important in any program. And one of the things that I was fortunate enough to do right from the get-go was to sit down with Coach Steve Corey, who was our guest speaker here. And one of the things we recognized was a lot of his kids were a lot of my kids. And Coach, as he'll share with you, has established a very successful program over the years. Incoming freshmen, they know what Lake Oswego football is all about. They know what the culture is. And part of what I felt was missing from the lacrosse side at Lake Oswego was stability, a foundation of culture, a foundation of positivity. And my success is largely attributed to being involved with Coach Corey, seeing how a successful program operates, and seeing not just as a football program or lacrosse program, but as a school program. And one of the things I wanted to do was to be able to create the foundation of success by building a positive culture at Lake Oswego so that I could turn it over when I left in 2019, so that Coach Bertoli now, who's taking the reins, is continuing in that tradition. And so now, 3 years past when I left in 2019, Josh has kind of built that same relationship with Coach Corey and continues on with how do we maintain and sustain success through positive culture. So I'd really love to now introduce you to Coach Steve Corey, Lake Oswego football coach, and a great missionary of positive culture in high school sports. Coach?
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. First off, thanks for having me, and I love your sport, that's for sure. The time Rick was talking about with the players that we had that intermingled with the two sports were just phenomenal athletes and knew how to compete, and the game's similar in so many ways. So I love watching. I don't understand a hell of a lot about it, but I love to watch it, and you guys do a great job with the kids. The topic of sportsmanship, and I'm one of those guys that I get on the ass of the official too, so I gotta watch myself. But I think in today's society, what we're dealing with is it's so much about me. It's just me, and it's the individualism. I think we all fight, from high school sports, and I'm sure you guys deal with it too. What the kids see on TV and the actions of all the way college, pro, whatever that they're watching and emulating, really. And so it's tricky. The social media world, which I'm not really a part of, but that's a tricky deal too. And what it really is, the sportsmanship actions and some of the things that occur, in my opinion, is it's really a selfish act. It's, again, it goes back to all about me, and kind of look at me, and they're standing over guys, or they're talking smack, or whatever it might be. It's a selfish act. So I think when I was thinking about the topic a little bit, and Rick asked me to speak a little on it, I think that the culture that you build, that you have in your program, or you're trying to build, is how you really stop it. We're not perfect for sure at Lake Oswego, but I don't put up with it either. When it happens, it's not a good deal, and our kids know it. And I think so. What I wanted to talk a little bit about today is kind of what I built at the program there at Lake Oswego, and I've been there for 31 years now. Started when I was 15, and been there a long time. Yeah, it's kind of a joke, but I'm an old guy now, and I've enjoyed my time there. But what you demand within the program, we don't put up with individualism and selfishness. We talk a lot about that. So again, I think we're all fighting that. But we created a great culture there with a bunch of good guys. It's not all about me, and I'm the one stand up here and talk to you about it. But first off, you have to have some pretty damn good people around you, and they've got to buy into what you believe and how you do it and what you're trying to build. I don't believe that everybody's got to be a clone. Everybody can't be Steve Corey and how he acts, and not a screamer or a screamer, whatever. But they definitely got to have the same goals, the same beliefs, and profess the same things that you do as the head coach. So it's important with the people around you. I thought it was priority-wise, building relationship with the kids. I'm a huge relationship guy, and in order to get anybody to buy into anything, you gotta have the buy-in. And so how you get buy-in is relationship, the way I believe. And so I'm constantly building my relationship, and when I say I'm talking staff-wise too, building a relationship with the kids. They needed to trust me, they needed to respect me, and again, the way you do that, you build a relationship, then you build trust in that relationship. So when you get on their ass, they respect that, you know what I mean? So, and as you people know, as coaches, you can get away with, a lot more than a parent. In fact, the parents love to, have you be the parent in a lot of situations. And so you guys and gals can do that as a coach. So, but they got to trust you and they got to respect you. And again, the way you do that, I think, is you build a relationship with them. The other thing we do there is everybody's important. And, that's another one of those things that you hear a lot, but you really gotta believe it, and you gotta treat the kids that way. So it was important to establish the fact that, hey, you're all important. We need you all, and we need you so we can build this to make it special. But the 65th guy, if you have 65 guys on your roster, whatever, is as important as the number one guy. And again, when you prioritize things, as you know in life, you prioritize things, then you make them happen. So I think it's important to have those priorities, whatever they might be, in building your program, because you, again, set those priorities. You're gonna follow them because they are a priority. You do that in your life. If it's a priority, your family and everything else is prioritized. You're gonna make sure that it happens. The ultimate goal always has been, and again, this is one of those things we all hear a lot, but I'm really big on life and life lessons, and these kids nowadays they're growing up too fast, but they sure can use some guidance on things, because they're getting some guidance from some crummy places at times. And so I'm always throwing life lessons out as much as I can to them, and again, important and something that we preach and talk about all the time to the kids. We have two rules in the whole program. Treat people like you want to be treated, and do what's right. And it's really simple, right? And if you think about it, those two rules cover everything. Treat people like you want to be treated, and do what's right. It's either right or it's wrong. And then what happens is I'm the authority guy. So I'm not a big rule guy at all. The rules are those two rules. And then I'll work it out. I think kids got a lot of shit going on in their life, and there's a lot of stuff that we don't even know, as their coaches. But, their parents are having trouble. Their girlfriend dumped them. They got an F their first time, whatever it might be. There's a lot of stuff going on in these kids' lives. So I don't make black and white rules. If you don't get to a workout, if you don't lift weights, whatever, if you don't come to practice, you can't, because there's just too many things. But those two rules are the two things that we hold them accountable to. And then the core values are built on those. So the core values whatever your core values are in your program, they're built on those 2 rules. And the thing about those, they never change. Now life's changed, and again, I've been there 31 years, and we used to watch film for 25 minutes. We watch it for 5 maybe now. Not literally, but their attention span's 2 minutes. So you got to make changes, right? And in the way they see things, and the way the way you talk to them. But core values, the things that are the important things, and those 2 rules, they never change. They never change, and you hold them to it. And so I make sure of that. So we've got everything in place in that regard. Everybody on the team, like I said before, they need a feeling of self-worth. They're worth something. They got to feel good about themselves, and that's how you build the program and keep it where it is, and keep it at the highest level if you can. But they got to feel good about themselves, from the freshman kids all the way to the seniors. And as you guys know, that there's not, everybody doesn't play. I don't know how many, 9 guys play at a time or something. It's 11 in our game, but only 11 guys can play, and so there's a lot of guys standing on the sideline and stuff. So they've got to feel good about themselves and what their value is to the team, and they do have value. We're in a sport, football, that it demands a lot of numbers, and that's where we've kind of suffered the last couple of years. Our numbers have dropped down, and it's hard to practice. It's hard to do the things without numbers. So you need everybody, and the kids got to feel that way and buy into that. It's not just about me, it's the kids. It's all about, the program bigger than them. We do a thing, and when we stretch, we come out, stretching's the biggest waste of time, but we do a thing where, they come out and they're all doing their thing and whatever, sitting around, and it's 10 minutes long, and again, it's a big waste of time, other than I make sure to go around and see every kid first off. So I go by and visit every single kid that day, every day. And I have our coaches at the start of the season, when things start in the first couple of weeks, I have each guy go around and hit up 5 kids that they don't deal with. So the offensive line guy will go and visit with the running backs, the DBs or whatever, and he'll just hit 5 kids, and it'll be a minute conversation, 30-second, how you doing, how's your mom, your girlfriend, how was the trip, whatever, how's your summer been? And I'll tell you what it does. It gives the value to the kids. You know what I mean? They feel they're really a part of it. All of a sudden, in a couple of weeks, all those coaches, and I've got a hell of a lot of them, there's like 16 of them, they go around and see the kids. So all those kids are hit up every single day. You don't think they feel good about it? They feel wanted, they feel a part of it. And some of those kids will never play a snap. So I think it's something, I'm, again, not sure how it works in your guys' stretch. If you stretch, it's a big waste of time, so maybe you change something. But everyone has a role. We talk a lot about roles. Everybody's got a role, and your role's important. And so after a game, we've come to this, it started out with our locker room setup was so bad when I first got there back in '92, that I would stand at the front of the room, and it was one of those locker rooms that had the lockers go like this, sideways. So the only thing I could see are the front guys, right? So who knew what was going on behind? So I started staying outside after the game and gather and talk. And now it's become something that people kind of come and hang out, right? And they listen to the after game talk. And one of the things that I do all the time is praise the guys that are the roles, the guys that are holding the bags, the guys giving you water, the guys that, doing the things that you're not going to read about, you're not going to see, they probably don't play. But again, those people are important, and I'm all about, making them feel good about who they are and what they're doing and a part of something. So the goal with some of this is, get the smallest job to perform at the highest level. Get the smallest job to perform at the highest level, so that, again, the guys holding the bags, or the guys being the scout guys and doing those things for you to get the other guys ready, that those people are important. Tell our kids all the time, everybody's got a best. Everybody's got a best, so give me your best. Now, my best is different than yours, and yours is different than mine, but just give me your best. And it resonates with the kids, because now the kid that's benching 100 pounds, and bench 100 pounds, and then try to get it to 110, and then whatever. But everybody having a best, and we've got that up in our weight room too. And I tell the kids the other thing: the players, they control the two things, and that's effort and attitude. So I expect great effort and great attitude all the time from you, because that's something you control. You know how good, or if you're getting your ass kicked by the guy across from you or whatever, then maybe you're not big enough, strong enough, whatever. But you can control the other things, and our kids, believe in that. I'm a real. Rick mentioned positive. I'm a positive guy. I just believe in positivity and positive things for the kids. I've never seen, somebody who didn't do better work with positive reinforcement rather than negative. And I've been around coaches and programs where there's a lot of negativity. We've had a lot of coaches come during playoff time and kind of observe practice. And one of the things that they say almost consistently is it always this calm? Is it always this quiet? We don't hear people yelling and screaming at the players, and that's really the way right now. Someone will, every now and then they'll get on them, and if I ever do it, because I'm not a big screamer and yeller, but when I do, they perk up, But I just think the more positive you are, and again, this is all going to relate back to sportsmanship, and how they act, because your expectations are what they are, and how you treat them, and how you run your practices, and the expectations, and how you're holding them to those expectations are a part of this. We're all trying to bring the individual, again, I keep coming back to that word individual, because I think it's something we're all fighting, together for a common purpose, bigger than me kind of deal. And again, that's a tough battle. We hold everybody to a standard, to the way they act, and again, the way they treat people, the way they act during games. And we got beat last night by a good Lake Ridge team. They just outplayed us and beat us. It's a crosstown rival deal, and it's a tough loss, and things I preached to the kids all week long was, no matter what happens, have class. And our kids did a great job. It was a hard loss for them, but they did a great job. But it's demanded, it's expected, and they expect to do it. So everybody's held to that standard. There was one year, all state nose guard were going into the semifinals, and he did some things in the training room, and this was on a Tuesday of that week, and just against the rules, if you will, and it wasn't good at all. So I kicked him off the team before the semifinals. We lost the game 7-6, went for 2, and dropped the ball. He would have made a difference, yeah. He would have made a difference for sure. But the program was bigger than him. And the kids that were in the program, that were the freshmen, sophomore, junior kids that were coming back, needed to know that the program was bigger than any of them. And so, great lesson for them. There's another kid, Andy Darkins, back probably 2002, that was a really good player. He went to Oregon State on a full scholarship, linebacker kid, and he was playing sophomore year. He started for us. And we were playing somebody early in the year, and he made a big hit and tackle or whatever, and he got up and he was kind of jumping over the kid and, just standing over him and doing that. I pulled his ass out of the game and brought him to the sideline. I said, "You ever do that again, you'll never play here." And I was dead serious with the kid. And this was a really good football player. Never did a thing again. And I'll tell you, the other guys standing around, they wouldn't do it either, right? So the thing was established. The rules were given. They knew what we wanted. They knew they were important and felt good about themselves and all that. Don't go there. And again, not that it doesn't happen. The kids are kids, and they get egged on, and stuff happens. But you got to stick to your standards for sure. The loyalty's a big deal to me too. I'm loyal to the kids. They're loyal to us. I have your back, you have my back kind of mentality. Again, team, not self. I think the loyalty thing, and we've had some great loyalty, and again, you build that. I think what it does in a locker room setting, and even on the playing field, you create a situation. I call it the bad apple theory. If you've got some guys that are those cliques, you guys have had them, I'm sure. Where you got a few guys and you know, you got some bad apple kind of guys. You build a program with the things that I believe in here. I think it's hard to be the bad apple. The bad apple spreads, right? So that guy is going to go to this guy and start bitching, and then together they're going to start bitching, and they're going to get 3 other guys to come and bitch, and then it's going to be a big bitch session with about 30 of them. You know what I mean? And it starts to really affect the whole program. So it's when you build it like we're talking about building it, that's hard to happen because they're an outsider doing it. They're an outsider, and they can still do it, and it can still get some traction with and you probably can identify some of those guys before the season even starts, but it's harder to do because of the things you've built within and the core values that you have within that program. So we've created a real family atmosphere, and again, one of those things that's said, you know, quite a bit. I bring guys back all the time to talk to the team. Casey Filkins was a really good running back for us a couple of years ago. He was here in the summer and playing at Stanford, and he came back and talked to the team. So I got guys coming back all the time. I've got letters and emails that I read to them, and I've got 8 guys on my staff that played for me. So what all of that does is just reiterate it, you know. And again, we have a thing saying in our locker room, tradition never graduates. So, you know, it's always in front of them. It's always being preached to them. They're seeing it. We're bringing guys back to talk about it, guys they respect. And so, again, create a real family atmosphere in what we're doing. I think one of the things that's happening today that adds to this sportsmanship, you know, idea and how kids behave, and again, it could be coaches too, and I'm guilty of it sometimes. I'm so passionate about the game, and I'm so, when a referee blows something, I mean, I lose my mind sometimes because it's unfair to the kids. That's the way I look at it. It's not my ego, you know, win a game and in that, but it's unfair to the kids. So I got to watch myself for sure. But I think one of the things that we're all kind of suffering from is win at all cost. And that's really prevalent in today's in sports. And where I see it is, you know, there's the families are spending money, right, for their kids. They all got their own damn trainers. Again, kind of all about me and what I'm doing and where I'm going. And the win at all costs isn't necessarily the game. It's everything and the game, but it's everything around it, you know, with the recruiting thing, you know, shit, they got, you know, highlight films and they're JV players, you know, it's crazy, you know, what goes on. I don't get on that stuff, so I really don't know about it, honestly, but my sons kind of keep me abreast. You see so-and-so put a highlight film, he's a JV kid. What's he doing with a highlight film? But again, me, and what's coming, and I think that, you know, the transfer thing now is really out of hand. You know, you think it's bad in college, it's getting bad in high school too, and we have them, kids transferring, guys are recruiting guys. Guys now have operations guys that, you know, are going to help with the recruiting. I don't know what they do, but they've got operations, a football operations guy. But again, this mentality of, you know, again, about me, if I'm not playing, I'm going to go over here, I'm going to transfer to Westland because they got good players and we're going to win a state championship. Again, that's I think we're fighting that. I really do. And so you got that kind of mentality and that kind of ego, and you're paying money, and, you know, you're worried about scholarships, and the parents can be a pain in the ass with it and everything. I mean, it's just a vicious cycle. And then the actions on the field that we're starting to see more and more, I think, is a direct reflection of that. And again, the transfer things, there's not as much loyalty. I'm afraid what's going to happen in high school sports is we're going to be club. You know, I won't be around, but it's going to be club before long. 10 years from now, it'll be club, and you won't play high school football, lacrosse, you know, basketball. I just think, which is kind of a crazy deal. Again, I'm an old guy, and, you know, the world changes. So if it goes that way, it goes that way. When you create the culture, you know, there's no room for the selfish, and I would say this, my advice would be never let it go unaddressed. You know what I mean? Something happens, you got to take care of it. You know, we'd like to put things off maybe, and you know, there's a big game coming up, or look the other way a little bit. That's, you know, I mean, we all have been in that position, I'm sure, if you've done it at all for more than a couple of years. You've been in that position before, but you gotta step up and take care of it then, not let it go, because then it just builds. And the unsportsmanlike thing, I think, is just a big part of that. So ultimately, you know, the whole goal for the program leads right into, you know, how you treat people and how you act, and, you know, do things with class. And I mean, that's what I want our program known for. You know, when I leave and I'm done, I want people to say, man, they ran a classy program. I don't care about the wins. You know, I love to win. I'm competitive as hell, so I want to win. But it doesn't matter how many won or if you won a title or not. I want them to say, man, classy group. And then I want my ex-players to say, man, he taught me a lot, and I love the guy. You know, I talk a lot about love. I tell them I love him all the time. And that, to me, is a successful program. That, to me, will, you know, take care of the unsportsmanlike stuff, because it just won't be a part of your program. Now, again, it happens in ours too, and but you know, it's very few and very rare. And I think if you ask people about our program, they would say similar things to that. So, goal is treat people right. You know, I make our guys thank the bus driver when they leave, thank our janitors when they see them in the locker room, an appreciation, you know, for the people around them. I also have special needs kids that work with us, and not every year, but we've got a couple of them now. One's an autistic kid, and one's just a kid that really struggles in school. And anyway, it's good for your kids to see that. You know, it's good for them. It's good to have those kids around, because that's life and that's real. And, you know, appreciating those people and treating them right, you know, that's something that they need to know and learn about. Again, this is all about being a good person, really. And that sportsmanship and all those things are all a part of that. Remember how fortunate you are. I tell them all the time, we're lucky to be here. We're lucky to be at Lake Oswego. We're lucky to be a part of the community here. We're lucky we can walk from here to there. You know, we've got a guy that has ALS, and Jeff Young, who's been a part of my program for, oh man, probably 20 years. He's been fighting, or had ALS for like 39 years. I mean, it's a miracle, right? This guy can't do anything for himself. He's got a gal that's his caregiver, but he's at our facility every Wednesday, writes a message to our team, and he comes there, and they can hardly understand him anymore. Another coach reads it, always has read it, but you don't think that's something life for kids to see, you know? And I tell them every Wednesday they get an earful from me about, you're lucky. You're friggin' lucky. You can walk from here to that practice field. This guy can't do anything. And there's a ton of people like this. So you're lucky to what you have. We lost a coach, Coach Barch, a year ago. That was hard. That was really hard. But again, that's kind of life. And again, this is all about, you know, how we've built the program and how sensitive we are with things that are out there, really. Be a leader. You know, again, decisions are either right or they're wrong. And so be a leader, be able to stand up. You know, kids today, and we were the same way. You know, I won't put you in my category, but, you know, you'd follow, you know, people. They do stuff, and you'd be right there following along. And if you didn't have the guts to stand up once in a while and say no, you know, who knows where you'd be or what you'd be in. You might be in a car where some guy's driving drunk. If you don't stop the car and get my ass out of there, then you're going to live with the consequences. So, you know, constantly telling these guys, be leaders. Life's precious, right? We all know that. Again, these are just things to keep hammering at the kids. And then again, the last one's gonna be, it's not about you, it's about us. And, you know, I think it's important to serve others too, and we talk about that, you know, help out where you can and do things. And that's really what we try to build at the school. That's kind of the ultimate goals. And I think those kind of things take care of some of the unsportsmanlike. Again, it's not going to flush it all out, but if you're not putting up with that stuff, and, you know, I have an open door policy, right? And you probably say the same thing. I tell the parents, come in and see me. quit bitching out there and talking about me. Come in and see me, and then we'll talk about it. And I've had a few. Most of them will stay out there and keep talking, which is fine. I mean, that's their right. But I have had some come in, and I tell them, I'll tell you the truth, though. That's the thing. I'm going to tell you the truth. You're going to get the truth. Your kid's lazy. He does a crummy job up at school. He treats people wrong, whatever it is. So I think that's important, too, being upfront and honest. The last thing I'd say is I really think, giving kids a good feeling about themselves and a real sense of confidence, in themselves, and that they can. These kids nowadays, and not only kids, but there's people. The mental health thing's a mess. Depression, anxiety, and all that stuff that people are dealing with. So, I think anything you can do with our young, and you guys have a great influence on these young guys, as you know. Giving them confidence in what they're doing and believing in themselves is a huge thing to always keep in mind and always keep pushing forward. So we have a poem actually that I learned as a young kid, and it's State of Mind. You probably have heard it, but all our kids, by the time they leave, because we say this poem every time before we go out to a game, so they all learn it, right? And when you learn a poem like this, it sticks with you the rest of your life, and it's got some great words to it. So I'm going to recite it for you, and it goes like this. If you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win but think you can't, it's almost a cinch you won't. If you think you'll lose, you've lost. For out in this world you'll find success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. Many races are lost before a single step is run. Many cowards fall before their work's begun. Think big, your deeds will grow. Think small, you'll fall behind. Think that you can and you will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you're outclassed, you are. You got to think high to rise. You got to be damn sure of yourself before you'll ever win a prize. Life's battles don't always go to the bigger, stronger, faster man. But sooner or later, the guy who wins is the guy who believes he can. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate it. I don't know if you want any questions or whatever. I mean, I'm willing to do anything. And you guys got lunch here, so you're probably hungry for lunch. Oh, yeah, my pleasure. Oh, yeah, for sure. I don't know how to do that. Someone will have to tell me. I can get it to Rick. Yeah, no, it is great. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, glad to share it.
I'm just going to bring up something. So you made a statement regarding everybody matters. That everybody matters. So my program is native. Okay? So one of the things people need to understand is that if you look at the history of lacrosse and the belief of the game is that everybody matters. Right? What's the first game? In Iroquois tradition, what's the first game? The first game is the game between the four-legged animals and the birds. That's the first game. And two little four-legged animals wanted to play with the bear, the deer, and the turtle. And they were laughed at because they were small. The birds took pity on them and made the bat and the flying squirrel. And they played for the birds. Who won the game? The birds. Who scored the winning goal? The flying squirrel. Everybody matters. And so that's one that, exactly. So there's, Jeff was talking earlier about where a game comes from. That's where a game comes from.
That's great. Thank you very much.
We're going to take a few minutes break before we get into the next session. We have food and drink up here. So please avail yourselves to the sustenance we've got for you. We'll reconvene in 5-10 minutes. Again, thank you, Coach Corey, for taking the time to be with us. We're going to reconvene in less than 5 minutes. I've been told we're reconvening in less than 2 minutes.
Because I need one while I'm looking at the screen here. I did today.
Will, what does your honey do? It's long and okay. We're going to get started again. Next on our agenda is comments from Tom Hoffert. Tom is my counterpart for the Oregon Lacrosse Official Association. And without that association, OHSLA really does not exist. we have a pool of people, student athletes, coaches, and officials. And without any of those groups, it's hard to put on the sport that we know and love. I've known Tom for a while. First met him as an assistant coach, and dealing with him all positive. As a coach, dealing with an official. That relationship has grown in many ways, not just in lacrosse, but also outside of the sport. Tom manages OHSLA with him and his board, similar to how we do it at OHSLA. We always feel when we do get together, whether Tom and his officials or myself with coaches, that it's integral to whatever each of us do, that we include the other in what we are doing. So with that, I'll turn the meeting over to Tom. He's got a presentation, update on rule changes, and working within the structure that we have out for today. Again, thank you, Tom, for being a part of what we do in the state of Oregon.
Thank you, Paul. Well, good to see you all. Thank you for allowing us officials to share a little bit of time with you at your annual coaches meeting. I brought with me certainly one of the best officials, and the reason most of us are officiating lacrosse in Oregon, that's our past president, Don Huber. For your years, you worked with Fred Zenson and Don, and I'm fortunate for the last 6 years to be asked to serve in this role. But it is always with our entire board voice around the table. We have 9 volunteer officials who serve on our OHSLA board of directors. They come from different regions, different experience levels, and we collectively come together and do what we feel is best to represent our officials. We are certainly not a union. All of our officials are at-will contracted employees of the OHSLA. But our association also looks out for the officials during the off-season, and we are certainly tasked with recruiting. And the role for me is completely vertical. We start with high school officials, and my role is ultimately to get our officials a small cadre talented enough to serve on the collegiate game, and then move forward to the ranks beyond that. And your student athletes are who make that possible. Your kids are insanely talented, and I really love what Coach Corey talked about when every kid has a role. And I'd like to let you know, in officiating, every official has a role, and we need to be very transparent with you that we have officials all on different trajectory paths. For some, this is a way to earn a few extra dollars while getting some exercise. For others, they have a deep passion for the game, and they want to give back in the ways that they are capable of doing now in their lives. And for others, it is about a brotherhood and being part of something much like coaching, where you are in a fraternity together. And imagine going into a profession where literally only 2 other people are pulling for you the entire game. It is a personality set. You've heard me say that before. And especially as you ascend to the highest levels of this profession, you meet one of us, you've met many of us. Most of us are fairly unemotionally connected to the game. We're very pragmatists. We're linear thinkers. We see a game, and it is our job to objectively decide, has an advantage or disadvantage occurred, or do we have an injurious situation? For us, it is about making good common sense decisions, and know that it takes quite a lot of experience. For those of you who have been in your job, your professional job, for many years, you're probably pretty good at it. For those of you starting out your careers or starting a new career, it takes a few reps to get better at your job, doesn't it? Well, that is exactly the case in officiating too. So I appreciate you understanding a little bit what we go through. Our contact information certainly here. Always happy to reach out and talk to coaches. One thing that we ask is if you have issues or want to talk about officiating, that needs to be directed directly through me and not the individual official on your game. There are a reason for those protocols, and it can be fairly overwhelming. If you're an official and you have a coach who maybe you don't know how long they've been in the sport, etc., and when they approach you outside of the game via email, it can be very intimidating, so I'd ask that you direct those through myself, and then I distribute those to the board accordingly. I want to talk about the funny situation a number of years ago. Those of you who know Dr. John Chessar, thank you, sir. Dr. John ran his first and only state title game last year, and John was 76 years old. And about 15 years prior to that, I sat on a grass field at Eastside Valley Catholic. And I was in my first couple years of officiating, but I knew the sport very well, and I was very connected when we had the Lumberjacks. And here on the sideline is Peter Morgan as the head coach, and Dr. John Chessar comes over to me and says, "Hoff, I just don't know if this coach really even understands the game of lacrosse." And I kind of look over and I'm like, "You mean Peter Morgan, the NLL All-Star?" Yeah, I think he's got a handle of the game, John. But why I share that story is our officials may not have the institutional history in this game that a lot of you do. And so we need a little patience with them as we're grooming them to become better officials. And it's catastrophic, the losses we have taken of officials. And I'll share a number, I think it's on the screen later, but 1 in 3 officials that were an Oregon official in 2019 is out of our system now. We have lost literally 1/3 of our officials in a 3.5-year span. That follows national averages, which are actually trend higher in other sports. So it's very challenging for individuals like Donna and myself who have to be constantly recruiting. And I know you as coaching staffs have to do that. And I know your numbers of kids has lowered a bit as well. We just have sheer coverage issues. And it's not just 2-man live pulse go to a game. We have to put crews together appropriately so we reduce injury risk and we have the skill set on the field. Foundation of partnership. We know our role is to provide a safe and fair playing environment so the game of lacrosse may grow and thrive. The role of coaches, develop the skills and aptitude of athletes to enable individual and team successes, and oh, by the way, win. We know the pressures that your parent associations and your high schools put on you to create the W's. And because of that, it does result in some higher tension sometimes in games that matter a lot. We try and recognize that as officials and adapt. We're going to talk a little bit about our rule changes today, some of the points of emphasis. Happy to field questions at the end, but I want to talk about last season, and you'll see we were down to 57 officials at the end of the year. And I'll give you a couple statistics that I know you enjoy on where we moved officials, etc. But one of the challenges with that 57 is we had 9 of our officials with what we call almost limited ability to serve, meaning I could do 1 game maybe a week or a couple if you're in an emergency situation. So 57 looks like, okay, you guys are down a bit, but we're down in games. It's a lot more challenging than that number suggests. We see our fairly huge dip in games, matching obviously what the league has done in some constriction. So that will always follow exactly your numbers. So 482 total games worked last year. We hit 3-man crews on varsity games 80% of the time. The goal, of course, is the state and the OHSLA would be 100%. That is going to be really hard for us to obtain, and I want you to know that on the front end. So when you're on a varsity contest and there's only 2 officials, know that it's probably not because somebody didn't show up. It's literally because of coverage issues across the state. We did have one varsity game. We ran 1 man. That was due to sickness, illness. Thank goodness that was a pretty seasoned official on that. And then we also, you'll see the vast majority of the other 19 remaining percent, the 17 were in 2-man games. There's another coverage chart. And thank goodness, the game we actually as officials feel is much more challenging most times. We had JV covered 100% with 2-man games. Some comments on JV in general. From an official's perspective, probably the hardest games to manage. Varsity, you have skill sets that have been reinforced and developed by you as coaches over a lot of years. JV tend to be the games where we're either filling bodies or kids are really learning this sport. There are some exceptions to that, but it is by and large one of the most challenging places to put our newer officials, because there is a thing that occurs in JV that generally doesn't as much in varsity, and what is that? Turnovers. So, as an official in a 3-man crew, we're set up and we're spaced and we rotate. In a 2-man crew, you're running a whole sideline back and forth, okay? You're trying to stay mentally, you're learning the game and you're trying to stay mentally sharp, and yet what's occurring all the time in a JV game? We are wearing our officials down physically on the JV game, and we know, and analytics prove, that as our physical strength and starts diminishing, as does our mental strength. So JV are very challenging contests. Let's talk about the rule changes this year, because this is likely what you were hoping mostly to see from me. Failure to have clearly marked center line that runs the entire width of the field and continuous side and end lines is an illegal procedure. This is USA Lacrosse cleaning up their lines piece. I know a lot of your fields have a big logo in the middle. All we've asked is you start with a line of tape in the middle. Please, I know it seems prickly when we call an illegal procedure. The reason that we do is it's in the rule book, and you as a coach, if you're a visiting coach and you do not have a center line, you have the ability to ask for that penalty. Seems trivial, but you know how we avoid that penalty altogether? 1 line of tape to start every varsity contest. We know that there's some logos through end lines and the like. I'm going to ask of you. Don't put your officials in the position to be measuring out fields. Okay? We have a lot of other things to worry about. It is your job as the home team to have your field ready. And if the other coaching staff notices errors there, that is not the problem of the officials if we make the correct call. That is the problem of the head team, the home team, for not having the field lined correctly. Substitution box, this is big this year. We are going to the college mechanic. For those of you who have been coaching a long time, you're thrilled about this. We are back to 5 yards on either side of the midline. What that means is the substitution box becomes incredibly clustered now. We're back together, tight quarters. Kids coming in, kids coming off. By the way, as coaches, please tell me you know this. Who has right away, the kid coming off or the kid coming on? Correct, Josh. Josh is an ex-official. Nice work, Josh. The player coming off has right away. That means if you are a bench player, regardless of how high level this game is, if you are coming out of the sub box, you need to move physically to allow the player coming off the right of way to come on. Else, you would possibly have an interference, or if it's heavy contact, you could have even a greater flag than that. So this area is greatly condensed now. For the purists, I love this, and I hope you as coaches embrace this. That's how it should be. We're going in and out of the same small space. it takes away the big advantages of that far long over the midline change where you know, Chad wants to run water. That box is now 5 yards. What? How was that a put down? Love this guy. What, are you kidding me? Oh, Chad's one of our favorites. No, but I mean, if you want to do that substitution, you've now cut down your zone by essentially 10 yards, certainly 5 on your other side of the midline, so be aware of that. Probably not a huge issue in Oregon, but worth watching. All of the heads now cannot have any gaps more than the width of a golf ball. There's a lot of unique stringing, and I guess we're going to see a presentation at the NILOA conference next month on the different stringing things that kids are doing to create advantages. What our officials are going to look at in a stick check is go around the head and make sure there's no big gaps in any of your stringing techniques, okay? This is quite an invention. You men's leaguers know what this is. So Gary Gates' company, the Gate brothers, came out with what essentially they're calling the hook head. If you haven't seen it, we got to see it all summer at the adrenaline tournaments as all the poles had these. Essentially, you have a hook there that allows you to grab the end of the, let's say you've got a midi or a tackman coming and backing down on you, you just hook the end of their stick. It's like literally a grappling hook. Those are illegal in all competition starting on January 1st, regardless of level. So if you have kids playing youth or whatever, you might as well tell the parents, save your $130. This is not allowed at any level of the sport, at any level anywhere. So youth, pro, you name it, this heads out. Any questions on that? Have you coaches seen this? Justin's probably playing with it. It's a weapon, though. I mean, it's an incredible weapon. And how somebody didn't think of this sooner, I don't know. But this was the best 6-month discovery ever for the game of lacrosse. If you were head sales, you had to get this to market fast. Because as fast as it here, it is gone. All right. I love this. This is the whole verbiage of athletic shoes. The whole thing is struck out now. Here's the new rule. Wear whatever you want, no metal spikes. Now, do you want them in athletic shoes for lacrosse? Of course. But this rule has literally been carved all the way down to get the kids playing in something they're comfortable running on the ground on, no metal. The end. Now your duty as a coach is over. Face-offs after periods and goals. This is just a clarification. Play shall be started at the beginning of each period and after each goal by facing the ball at the center, with the exceptions of these areas. So obviously a flag down, that can create no face-off, and we would go a man advantage or free, what we call, you'll hear us say a free clear, which is essentially step 1 foot over the midline, and we're going to go live ball. A team commits a foul before the face-off, so we're dead ball. We have no face. Gentlemen down, cross-check, boom. No whistle. Go white is off for a cross-check, no face-off, 1 foot over the line, and we go. Any face-off delays, so if you create a delay a game, you're not going to have a face-off. That's pretty obvious. Or the player moves the cross of the body after set. This basically just clears up language in the rule book. This is something that is all very common sense, and you have already been playing under, because the officials, we just make this happen after each goal or change a period, but it clarifies it in the rule book. Here's this is a great one for all coaches to understand. I would say about 50% of our coaches understand the rule on losing equipment. I had a coach, kid, take a shot. As he does it, his glove falls off, ball hits the ground, his player picks up the ball, I blow the whistle. Coach is up my you-know-what. He lost his glove, that's a turnover. Coach, the whistle, the team who rightfully should have the ball when a piece of equipment comes off, retains the ball. It is not a turnover at all. This whole rule and clarity is to remind us all that preventing injuries is our most important duty. The other key with losing equipment, it is not going to be necessarily a fast whistle, because we cannot restart until we see the physical equipment back in place. So kid just yelling to go until we see the hand is re-gloved, we're not saying anything and not blowing the play well. Play shall be suspended immediately if the goalkeeper's stick or any other mandatory goalkeeper's equipment becomes broken in the crease. Shot breaks, we've seen a few of the shafts break. Shaft is broke, it's an immediate whistle, okay? Because even though it's a shaft, it is seen as protective equipment for a goalie, because they could technically block a shot with it, right? It's probably how it got broken in the first place. The current rule did not define what happens when the goalkeeper is injured when away from the crease and outside the scrimmage area. So the clarity there is a goaltender outside the crease is treated like a field player immediately when they are outside the crease. So just like a field player, if a goalie were to be outside their crease and lose their goal, their glove, what will you have? An immediate whistle, and the team who should have the ball will be returned the ball. That could be the goaltender's team. It could be the offensive team. But I get the frustration. You're sitting and you've done a 200, and here you go. Here comes your guy down the middle, and the goalie doesn't have a glove on. Hoff, I'm going right on goal. How can you blow that? Safety will always cause us to blow the whistle, so just remember that.
Real quick, with the equipment stuff, shot on goal, ball goes in, lacrosse and something like that. What's the call on? Is that dead ball, or, you know what I'm saying?
The shooter's head came off, absolutely no goal, illegal equipment. Yeah, only the shooter. A passer passes to a guy, their head flies off, then the guy shoots and scores, as long as it was not the offending player. Now, the passer who just lost his head, what can he not do? Play any sort of the play. He drops his shaft and has to run to the sideline. Great question, Neil. Stall warnings. The clarification here is if a stall is on, and remember that's at the discretion of the officials, there's no set thing. Most officials are about a minute 20 in a settled situation. When does it start? Not when the goalie made the save. That doesn't start. You're about a minute 20, about a minute 30. It's when you're established in the attack box. What this clarifies is if a shot has been taken, it still keeps on the stall warning. If it is resulting, the defensive team gains possession of the ball or the period ends resulting in a face-off. After the team has been warned, stalling shall be called if the ball leaves the goal area in any other manner than the result of a shot or touch by a defending team. So you have a stall warning on. Shot comes off the goaltender. No touch of the goaltender. Over the cage. Obviously, we have stall on. Period ends. Stall is on. Man up situation, you're staying in the attack box. Start of the new period, guess what happens? You're already in stall, and we will communicate that to you. There is no trap on that. And remember the rule with stall. What we're looking for is inside that attack box, it is not to trap you. You have 10 seconds now to get into the attack box in a stall situation. It's not an immediate whistle while they're outside turnover. They got 10, and it'll be a visual 10 by the closest official. Any questions on that?
The ball never starts in the attack area.
Correct. No, once you're in, you are committed to be in. One thing as officials is that we teach our guys, we're not starting a situation where we're right here and the kid literally can be pushed in and now out. We got to create that spacing so it's an equitable start. During running time, penalty time will start with the whistle resuming play after a penalty is administered. If there is time remaining on the non-releasable penalty when a goal is scored, the earliest the penalty will release is when the ensuing face-off is completed. How do we judge a completed face-off? It has to have a possession or a ball directed out of bounds by a team that we know who directed the ball out, okay? When that release occurs is on the next live whistle. So it's not the ball goes out of bounds and they're released. You have to wait to the next whistle. And us as officials have to communicate that to the table. And usually what we'll do, it's a very simple mechanic. I'll go and I'll turn back and I'll go, table, wait till you hear possession to release that player. Or if it's gone out of bounds and we know who directed out of bounds, let's say we're going to go dark ball. We point dark and I'll turn to the table and say, this player can release on the whistle. Just listen to that cadence between the officials, and if you have a question, stop us before the live whistle and go, is he out now? So like a goal scored, yeah, send your guy out. We'll go like this. That means release. Penalty is released. But if you have a question, make sure to ask us before that next whistle, because you don't want to have too many men on. Another trap that I talk about with our officials, and every time we're wanting fast restarts, is too many men. So I'm trail, and let's say OES has 7 over the midline, and they've got they're 4 behind. It's not an offsides. It's actually functionally a too many men. I blow the whistle. What do you want to do? You want to immediately head the other way. Why can I not go live? They still have too many men. So you have to realize as coaches, I know you want it fast, but I have to let them get that too many men over. It's a difference. Offsides, yes, I can go live whistle because it's not too many men. Too many men, we have to allow that player to exit the playing surface, or you're essentially starting it and you'd have to throw your flag immediately. I want to talk to you a little bit about what our officials go through and our commitment back to the league to be ready. All of our officials attend a 4-hour annual meeting. I know a number of you have come and spoken at that, and I appreciate that. We're going to ask you that you do again. All of our officials attend 3 2-hour veteran training courses in addition to the 4-hour meeting. Okay? And we do these regionally. They must complete their USA annual certification test through the portal, and then we have special things on concussion, social media, and conflict of interest. One of the things we're going to ask this year from coaches is, after games, if it's not positive, let's not. If it's not positive, let's not. Because there needs to be a cool down period, and we all think a little differently after a little few moments away from the action. And by the way, that goes for officials too. If an official's been tuned up the whole game, how do you think they're feeling at the end? Probably not the first time to go, hey, let's go talk about a push call. Okay? Our rookie officials coming in, and we're hopeful to have a nice crop, and Don does a great job training them. They also, in addition, go through 6 3-hour training classes. So it is very intense to become an official. We need to do a great job in serving you as coaches and serving the game, so it does take a lot of time. But again, know that those officials are at different trajectories in their learning and maturation process. So a little insider info on our points of emphasis. Our officials have not seen this yet, but this will be our points of emphasis for the year. An unwavering commitment to constructively partner with all our shareholders through leadership, both on and off the field. 0 tolerance for gross displays of misconduct. Football, and I was curious if Coach Corey was going to talk about it, but football has moved to the one voice model in Oregon. I would suggest that the OHSLA board consider this. And what the one voice model is, one voice gets to talk from the sideline. Now, most of you alphas would say, I'm the head coach, I want to be that voice. We don't care. You tell us who your one voice is, but guess what comes with one voice? One voice. So that means your assistant coaches and the like get the first time we hear from them, and I'm not saying, hey, can you clarify the call? That's not what I'm talking about. Ref, you goofed that up. First time, warning. Second time is actually a bench misconduct, 1 minute, full time. And who does that ultimately play back to now? The head coach. What happens when two unsportsmanlike conducts to the bench occur? The coach is ejected. So one voice is something I hope you all consider, and what a great way for you, those of you who really feel your assistant coaches overstep sometimes. For those of you who feel I want 10 voices yelling at the officials, this will be a major difference in how you would look at things. No matter the challenge, the official is always professional and partnership focused, always. And lastly, we have a relentless commitment to improving on-field performance of the entire crew, and not just ourselves, thus improving the game in general. We know we have to do our part. So understanding, I loved this quote by Coach Tolzman, wrote it down. I'm making 1,000 micro adjustments over 48 minutes of action with 25 players, 4 assistant coaches, and 3 officials to win by 1 goal. That our officials have to understand this. Most of our officials have not been coaches before. And I'm going to be really transparent in Oregon. Most of our coaches have never played a formal game of lacrosse. Now that's changing. Most of our officials, have never played a game of lacrosse. That demographic has changed a lot in the last 5 years. We are getting way more players in the system. But we still have a lot of gentlemen and at times ladies who want to go out and just participate and give back, get a run-in, and get a little bit of a paycheck. Coaches seek someone who can empathize and relate with them. One team will win, one team will lose, and guess what? Coaches' reactions will be justifiably different. Our officials have to understand that. Coaches need to know that we care about them as much as they care about their craft. We care about our craft as much as you care about yours. There is no official that goes out onto the field and says, boy, I hope I really screw some things up tonight. God, this would be awesome if I could just insert myself at the perfectly wrong time and have the whole field be upset with me due to my lack of knowledge or a poor call. That is not how we're wired. We actually want to be great at this, and I want our officials to want to be great at this. And we have mechanisms when they're not to assist, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. So our officials need to create their own brand. We need to be outwardly committed to partnership, professional and courteous at all times, succinct, clear, and direct communicators. We don't take ourselves too seriously. We must know the rules. And I start with this with beginning officials because it becomes the foundation. You can be really good at managing games, but if you just flat out don't know the rules, what a disservice. A great game manager is second to none, but you got to know the rules. Steady, calm, and solution-oriented, and a sense of humor isn't so bad with us, right? Because you guys all have them too. The question gets asked all the time of Don and I. There are 3 assigners in the state, myself, Don, and a gentleman named Tom Johnson in the high desert. How do we assign games, Hoff? I don't get these assignments. Why do I get this guy? And it is not, contrary to maybe some thoughts, that we just spin a magic wheel and go, okay, we got Alex with Jim, and How we look at things is, at most crews, as best we can, we'll have a pretty seasoned veteran on a crew. Now, they may not look like a specimen. Nick Harrigus is about 3 bills and with 2 bad knees. But he's still out servicing and trying his best. But what Nick has is he's been there, done that. And now we have these young studs coming up, some of them, and they're in great shape and but they haven't had the reps yet. So we try and do a mix. And one thing that I want to make sure that you understand is the R on the game is the crew chief. They're ultimately responsible for the game. You will see Don and I almost never put ourselves as ours because we want our guys to get these reps. Now, when the playoff comes, it's different, right? We know, we get that. But just because the R may be newer or greener in this doesn't mean you're without some veteran presence, hopefully, on the crew that can be logical and talk through the challenges. Huge thing is availability. I mean, we just get devastated. There's nights, and we really need to push this year. Brian Platts did a great job of running the numbers, and Paul, I appreciate you and Rick and Jeff's support on this. There are just certain nights, if you have a night with 25 games, you are begging for catastrophe with officials. I mean, it just is a fact. And I know field times are challenging, but we have to get the games balanced out. The great part is our association has totally embraced Saturday and Sunday games, which we were like, for years, oh God, nobody's going to want it. Now officials are like, oh, weekend? I'd actually prefer to be working on a weekend. So the 7-day schedule is totally open for officials. And quite honest, the collegiate officials, that's when we're used to working anyway. So it's very natural for a lot of the association. We assign to minimize expenses for travel for both officials and teams. With gas prices last year, we had officials turn back record games. And I know we'll talk on fees and the like in just a moment, but the reality is, guys, with gas prices, we didn't keep up at all. So I'll give an example. I live in Salem, but I work almost exclusively in the Portland area. Very common, if I had a game at Sherwood, I would get $76. Well, I'm a nuthead and I drive a Toyota truck. So not the best gas mode. Sure, it's on me. Go buy your EV vehicle. I get it. I still support combustion, whatever. I'm the bad guy. The reality is, $76 earned, $45 is gone in gas for me, back and forth. That's one thing when you have a professional career that Don and I have both been blessed with, to have flexibility financially. We have officials literally saying no. That's going to cost me $38 to there and back. I'm going to get $12 in gas in return. Nope, I'm hitting no. And it's a real challenge. So it's not just trying to reduce costs for all of you, because I know your club programs and you don't want officials. Nobody wants to see, oh, official, oh, great, Tom came from Salem to Bend. Wonderful. Ben's got 10 officials there, but we sent Tom all the way over to Bend for $160. We know you don't want to see that. We're trying to prevent that. But we do have some situations where we just don't have guys some nights. So be aware when that happens. We're not trying to stick it to you. It's the last thing. In fact, most guys don't really want to drive that far. So we're trying to do our best there.
Southern region's going to have a real problem this year.
Yeah.
I think we have 3 officials in the Eugene area.
3 officials in Eugene now. We had 5, but these 2 big tanks here decided to become coaches like all of you. But we'll get them back someday. It is a big challenge, especially down in Eugene. Playoffs are certainly different. How do you assign in playoffs? We get the right crews for the right games. And always welcome your feedback. But we do get that rotated amongst guys because we need some aspirational side where guys realize, hey, I can work up and get some really key games. So recruiting and retaining officials are our key issue right now. I told you about the numbers there, and we have the analytics, and our troops have filled out and told us what's the number one reason they leave. You have to already know this. Behavioral issues from coaches, players, and parents. That is why an official hangs up their skates and is done. That's it. It's not because, hey, my body's getting older. We've got guys in their 70s willing to do this. Guys are leaving because of behavioral issues with players, coaches, and parents. And by the way, it's really one group largely. And unfortunately, it's the coaches. Please, Don.
So even though you don't It's not gonna happen.
Wrap
So,
up.
although it makes you feel better, you feel like you're doing something to influence the situation, to the contrary, as an official, if the guy's yelling at me, I'm like, that guy's a dick. Right? Now, I'm gonna be a little more nitpicky, right? If he wants to continue to ride my ass. So my suggestion to his coaches, I'm a coach, being an official, they're not perfect, right? I was far from perfect. Except that, but then also acknowledge that the call is what it is, right? And it's our job as coaches and as players to just adjust and move on, okay? What I always ask of the officials, is ask them to just be consistent. Because the bar, changes, right? Depending on the experience of the officials. But yelling at officials is not going to cause them to change his call. I assure you of that.
Yeah, we want to actually build some community here. Us as officials love working with you guys. And maybe we're not the most social group. It does take a weird brain to enjoy this. But the key word is our officials need to have fun doing this, or they will not do it. So there needs to be an element of fun and enjoyment for them. Do you know the number one reason officials, and this is our Oregon group, officiate? The brotherhood of our group. Can you imagine a group that says, it's okay that everyone hates us when we go to work? We come here because we love working with each other. So yeah, are Don and I pretty, want to defend the Hive? Yes. But I do want to talk briefly about the other side of that. We also are not afraid to remove. And I always give you the stat that's private. Well, more or less private. I'm sharing it, but no names, obviously. We had 4 games removed from official schedules last year due to on-field performance, and 1 official removed from our association altogether due to on-field performance. So this group, although I'm talking to you about retaining and how we grow it, we also are very aware that there are poisons that do not need to be on the field, and when we see them, we adjudicate appropriately. And as much as you guys keep each other accountable, we keep our officials accountable, because it's not okay when something bad happens on the field that is our fault. It is one thing to be wrong on a rule and get to understand and learn, and it is another to have behavioral issues that do not help the game. And like you, we don't tolerate that either. Year-round duty for recruiting. So I want to talk about, we are going to be tracking, the OSAA has a 9-page document you probably all have read. If not, I brought copies that will talk about the fees and travel structure for OSAA officials through 2023 through 2025. It is our intent to match or be very close to those figures. I bridged the conversation with Coach Melville and Paul, and I always negotiate this. We are just getting a very heavy response from our members that we need to align with the other 2 outdoor sports that are in similar time. So we'll be following football and soccer, the fees paid for them, as well as travel very closely. And those negotiations are ongoing. Once they have solidified, we will put our program together, and it will be very transparent. And you'll see very matching numbers for other sports, but be aware that will be potentially a large proposal. There is a sentiment, right or wrong, that, okay, fine, if I'm going to keep dealing with this, then I at least need to be paid more. I'm not saying that's held by many of us, but there is a portion of our group that says, okay, if I'm going to keep tromping through this, something sometimes I don't enjoy, I at least want to be compensated appropriately for that. One of the things that really bit us was gas prices last year. I'll just be really honest, probably bit your programs too. Our officials turned back games at record numbers because they just couldn't afford to drive. And literally, I mean, from one region to one region is $40 in gas. If your whole game's fees $68, I mean, we all love the game, but I don't mind it, but some of our guys don't want to make $28 a night. I'll just be honest. Okay, that's what I have for you. I guess a couple highlights. I'd like to give you some updates. 2 of our officials worked their way up to our highest certification, which is called a level L2S. So we had 2 new officials join that rank this year. We have 1 official who will be invited into a NILOA tryout, which in our world, the collegiate game is kind of one of the higher areas that we can go without getting international and professional. And we're very proud to be bringing Devin Bentz into a collegiate tryout in the spring, and that would put him on collegiate fields in 2024. We have pared down our collegiate officials quite a bit, largely through retirement, and deciding not to replace them. There just are not enough games collegiately in our region to get the guys the reps that we need, so we intentionally have really cut our numbers down there. I'll be honest though, out of 57 officials, 10 of those officials will ever see a collegiate game. Maybe. Probably closer to 8 or 9. And so the reality is we are trying to groom people not to be future collegiate officials. We're trying to groom them to be great high school officials and to enjoy it. And so really appreciate your partnership, and if we can do anything to serve you better, we'd like that opportunity, and of course happy to take any questions, and I'm sure Don would as well. Yeah, Josh?
Is there, I am trying to get my team, the junior officials, you have a junior official training set yet?
So this is an area we would like to ultimately be vertical, but there is a little bit of a power play between youth, and I'll be honest, I'm not interested in it. Don's more interested than I am. I have found youth parents to be an incredibly unique bunch, and much like John Chessar asking if Peter Morgan knows lacrosse, I have had some parents suggest to me that I need to get some officials training for myself because I didn't know what a push was. I mean, it's just crazy sometimes. Josh, there is no central block in Oregon. I think we would be at our strongest if the OLOA eventually was completely vertical to youth. But there is a group that has kept the youth portion, because I think there's probably some dollars there within themselves, and they run that training program. So I invite you to connect with Nick Harrigus or Bob Weir on that. I think at some point, if we're going to mature as a state, we really do need officiating to be as vertical as coaching and young people are, which means Don and I and others coaching junior officials to become eventual officials and the like. I would hate to end this conversation without inviting any of you to become officials. Our training starts in earnest in January, and Don and I, you guys would be such a great group to draw from. And to my understanding, we have a couple of you coming over next year, including Kyle Hamburger. And who's our other one? Didn't we have? We had another coach. Oh, well. We got at least one of you.
Can I make one comment then, too?
Please, Don.
I just wanted to remind you, coaches, that you also have an opportunity to give our officials feedback. If you go on site, there is a list, there is a feedback area. I'd say probably about 5% of the coaches use it. And when we're talking about feedback, it's not, this guy sucked all night and he, whatever. Just positive things, but if we have an official that is really, every time this guy came down, he called the wrong penalty time on something. We need feedback so that we can get in contact with those officials and make sure that we correct that. I know 10 years ago we had an official down in Roseburg, and every penalty was non-releasable. Okay. Well, I didn't know that till I got feedback from the coaches saying every time this guy calls a penalty, it's non-releasable. Well, how long did that take to cure? About that long.
Dave gave us a quick call on that.
So, I mean, the thing is,
Huff, when is a push a 1 minute full time? Chad.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for all that you guys do. Your organization is pretty special. I know that there's a time to be part of your training couple of years ago as a guest speaker there, and I have it's rare to walk into a room with that many people who are so dedicated to like learn and want to be there, and really it was so professional. It blew me away. Someone who has not been able to peel back in terms of officiating of my career as a player and coach. I was very old time officiating. So to see that group was like so encouraging for me, and just another level of respect from my side of things, see what you guys are doing. So really just thank you guys.
I appreciate that. Don?
I have one more question. Tom, have you considered at the official level having, sometimes I think the challenge with coaches is we have an expectation only, right? Whether it's a 2 or 3 man crew, and that the officials are going to be at a certain level. Clearly not, right? Some are more experienced than others. But the reality of it is we get the same game fee for officiating. Do you think there's an opportunity there to have like a junior official where maybe the fees a little bit lower because they're learning and then through the assessment process and they graduate kind of in that higher level? And then as a coach, knowing that going in, okay, so it's a junior guy and learning, I think it would be a lot more extended, just as the thought.
Yeah, the reason we can't, Don, is equity. Because they're independent contractors, we have equity laws. Because we're not unionized, which I think we all can agree is probably a good thing, we have to apply the same to all. So what we've done to delineate there the best we can is our L2S. And there is only 9 serving L2Ss now in the state, 10, but Kent Roberts has retired. If you have one of them on the game, they are certainly your sage veterans, and it is a challenge to get probably a delineation there for a lower fee. We have brought that topic up before, and it was our attorneys quickly said, nope, you can't touch that. Yes, sir.
Well, I just have a quick question about that field rule. Does the opposing coach have to notify the official before the game? Or, I know this would be cheap, but do they just hold on to that and say, oh.
Yeah, once the game is started, that call cannot be made. So, for one thing, there is no hold it in the pocket. If you ask for it before the game, we will adjudicate. And that's why I told you, it's going to feel prickly, but I'm giving you that heads up now. The coach could ask for that. Now, are we going to go into training and tell all of our officials, hey, the first thing to do, let's see if we can get a line call on the home team? I mean, most of you guys know us well enough. I just want our guys to not get hurt themselves, some of them, while they're out there. But you are well within your rights to ask for that, and when it gets called, don't be pricky about it. It's what it is.
A lot of times we're pointing that out.
We actually will tell you before the game, hey, coach, I know you're going to draw a line across the middle before our start. I mean, we try and be really subtle.
Or give up the first face-off, whatever you want.
Yes, sir.
If the logo has a dotted line through it, is that okay, or do you have to extend that to be a solid line?
Oh, Jesus, you guys.
Solid, Don?
I mean, how many of you have the ability to reline your fields? I mean, I think you got to work with what you have. Yeah. The key is the face-off line. Just give us 3 feet of line there, and you're good. Question? Nope. Well, gentlemen, thank you all for allowing us to spend a little time. It is an honor for us to serve, and we want to be as good as you are. We really do, and appreciate the partnership, and let us know if we can do our service a little better at any time. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Tom. We're running a little late. One thing I did want to add to Tom and Don's comments. As always, since I've been commissioner, we've ordered NFHS rule books for each team. And this year is not going to be any different. We will be ordering the 2023 rule books and those with score books also, and getting them out to you prior to start of season.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.
Okay. Once again, Jeff Melville. Hey, did everybody in the room get their name on the sign-out sheet or sign-in sheet? Duh. Can we circulate that over there to get Mike and Jeff on there? Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to talk about the standard operating procedures for the league, SOPs. How many coaches in this room are first-year head coaches? Hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. Okay. How many are second-year head coaches? A little higher would be great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. How many are third year or more? Okay, so that's encouraging. Does everybody know where the standard operating procedures for OHSLA are on the website? Is that a yes? Okay, so for you new guys that may be too bashful to nod your head, you go to the OHSLA website, you go to information, you go to OHSLA, and you go to Forms and Docs. And in the Forms and Docs section, there is a section on the standard operating procedures. It's about 9, I think it may be 12 pages. It takes about 20 minutes to read it. That is critical, essential. If you haven't done it as a new coach or as an experienced coach, they are revised in 2023, and we've highlighted the areas of revision. So it's really important that you absorb that information prior to the season. So the standard operating procedures for Oregon High School lacrosse work in conjunction with the NFHS rules of the sport and the OSAA guidelines that exist for other sports. And so basically what we do is we take the rules, we take the OSAA guidelines, and we create our standard operating procedures. And there's no diversion there, right? It's all, to use Tom's word, it's all vertical. There are updates for 2023, so please be conscious of that. All coaches are responsible to read, abide by, and acknowledge the SOPs. Like I said, all of the updates from 22 to 23 are highlighted, and there are quite a few. How many people in this room are familiar with this form, the Team Certification Acknowledgement Form, this form right here? Okay, let me go the other way. How many people are not familiar with this form? Okay, so again, you're part of my audience here today. This form gets submitted to the league, and when Will goes over the calendar, there is a date on there where you need to submit this form to me. And basically what it does is you have to put all of your coaches' names here and confirm that they have the required certifications. The certifications are all in the SOPs, and they don't divert from OSAA. So you've got the same requirement that a football coach or a basketball coach or a wrestling coach, you have to have the same certifications from the NFHS. There are some changes from 22 to 23. You are also certifying when you sign this document that you have read and understand the standard operating procedures in their entirety, okay? So this is our certification as a league that you have liability insurance for your program. You have read and understand the SOPs, and that all your coaches that have contact with kids have been through all of the training that they need to and all of the certification that they need to. There may be additional requirements from your school district. As an example, first aid isn't on here, okay? But at the school where Luke works, you also have to have a first aid, CPR, AED certification, okay? So this is inclusive of what we need: insurance, coach's certification, and that you have read and agree to abide by the standard operating procedure. Very important. And if we don't get this in a timely manner, I nudge you, I encourage you. My point is, address it now so that you're not telling me, gee, Jeff, the season starts in 2 weeks and I've got some coaches that aren't certified. That's not going to work for us. We're gonna have a problem with you starting practice with uncertified coaches. So if you got any questions, you can come to me. Yes, sir. Every season, and it's on the calendar. I forget what the date is. Due on 2/9 of 23. How about that? Okay, in the SOPs is a reminder about open and closed periods. So that's when you can hold sessions with your players and when you are restricted from holding sessions with your players. There is a huge uniform change that is implemented in 2023. Now, it was supposed to be 2022, but we gave a one-year exception. Home team must wear white uniforms. So light-colored uniforms don't work. We've got one team in particular, they have a light gold home uniform. It's not white. That's not going to work for us. And so we put that out there several times as it is relative to this rule. It was supposed to go in place beginning of last year. It's now fully in place. Okay. Must wear white. Coaches in the box is limited to 4. So, if you're the biggest program in the state, whatever, you can only have 4 coaches in the box. And that's something that, along with our sportsmanship issue, we're going to hold to this year. A couple of friendly reminders. The coaching certifications were updated in 2022. And one of the examples is you have to have concussions every year, but the heat illness and prevention is like every 3 or 4 years. Academic eligibility. So we have a standard of academic eligibility that may be different than your school district. And so our issue is they have to meet the higher tolerance. Okay? I know at the school where Luke coaches, they have a higher tolerance for athletes. They have to have certain things that aren't in the OSAA. Just beware of that. Okay? Where athletes can play and co-op agreements. That's part of the SOPs. Coach Curry talked about kids transferring to try to play for a different program. We follow what OSAA says relative to that, which basically puts it back on the athletic director, but that's very clear in the SOPs. Out-of-state games need approval. You cannot travel out of state without getting the approval of the commissioner to do that. Excessive game change requests. Tom talked about how we have 3 assigners around the state. When you put forth a game change request to either change the time or change the day of a game, it may seem like there's a good reason for it and like it's important to you, but it creates a lot of havoc behind the scenes, right? So those refs have already blocked out that time. If they've got drive time, whatever the case may be, when you put forward a game change request, especially when it's close to that game, it creates a lot of headaches. And sometimes if you're too close to the game, we can't honor it. And second of all, when we start to see 4 or 5 from a team, we're going to actually charge you for that. Report scores immediately out of courtesy, right? So I know I've been to some games where the score doesn't get reported till noon or 2 o'clock the next day. The SOPs say you report the score immediately, and that's out of courtesy to us in the league and as well as the opposing coaches and the other coaches in your league. Before you leave the field, you should be posting your score. One of the additions for 2023 is an appendix that addresses sportsmanship. It's taken straight from OSAA, same thing that football, basketball, wrestling, track, those same sportsmanship guidelines. And there's also a coach's code of conduct, which we have taken from a blend of the NFHS and OSAA and USA Lacrosse. So please read the SOPs. It's critical. If you have questions about the SOPs, I'm kind of your go-to guy. Please email me, call me on the phone. Happy to walk you through that. If you're a new coach and you struggle with the SOPs or with the team acknowledgement form, call me. I'll help you. I've been doing it for years, so we're happy to do that. And once again, back with our partnership about sportsmanship, we want a partnership with you guys now about these requirements, so I'm not calling you 2 weeks before practice going, hey, Nielsen, if you don't get your form in, we're not going to let you practice. Please, let's not get to that point. Okay, so we're trying to get us back on track. Are you next? All right. Will Harris.
My name is Will Harris. I am the newest assistant commissioner for this league. I'm proud to be serving these guys. Just going to run through the catalog, the calendar a little bit if you can pass those out. This calendar is available. It's available online at OHSLA.net. I think it's directly under the info tab. But I'm kind of old school. I like to look at stuff. Sometimes it's easier for me to find paper than it is to navigate. So we already talked about some of the important dates here. One thing to recognize is that we are already in the OSAA fall season. The open and close periods are really important. We're currently in the fall open period. You guys can be running practice according to SOP, a set number of hours. I think that's 6. But be aware the winter season is about to start. That date starts 11/14. That's a closed period then for you. You're not supposed to be engaged in lacrosse-centric instruction with your players. That winter open season will start on 12/26. Probably not going to go out and run practice that day, but you're open from that day forward through the beginning of the season. And the first start of our season is the 2/27, right? So up through 2/27, again, you're restricted in the hours that you can provide lacrosse-centric instruction, and then we start practice. As Jeff mentioned, the team certs are due on the 9th of February. It's an important date there. Do we have a dues deadline on league dues?
End of season.
Okay, so pay your dues by the end of the
By the
beginning of the season, which would be 2/27. That allows the league to function and provide the things, including refs, for you throughout. There's some administrative things here about scheduling. Scheduling will start on 2/27. A lot of this you guys do yourselves. Want to have scheduling done by 3/2. It's important that we get the game schedules up. Make sure you guys are paying attention to that. You saw this up on Tom's schedule, the scorekeeper training. Important that people who are sitting at the desk understand what they're doing. Please take advantage of that. It's a resource to you and your parents. So start of the regular season, meaning gameplay contest, March 13th. We roll straight into spring break and come out of spring break with the Fritz Hayes Classic, which is a classic representation. It honors a former ref here in the state of Oregon. It'll be composed of the semifinal and championship teams from last year, so see how those teams come back this year. One of the things that I think, I always missed as a head coach was the academic All-American nominations due. Wonderful opportunity to recognize one of your student athletes, one of your scholar athletes. I'd put that on your calendars and over the early parts of the season, see if you don't have somebody that fits that description. And Ken, is that description, the nomination, actually online? Do we have? We'll make sure that information also gets out to you. I think it's a wonderful opportunity way to represent our values in supporting scholar athletes.
Forms and docs section, it talks about it, and the nomination form is in.
Excellent. And we hit the end of our season, middle of May. We allow some JV games just a day later. And then we want to get the playoff rankings released right away. So that's why that hard stop on the scheduling. Your coaches' reps, you'll need to start meeting and start thinking about, at the conference level, some postseason awards, so make sure you don't forget about that. And then we run into our playoff series here, culminating in the state championship on 6/3. So first weekend in June, we celebrate our season with that championship, down and dirty. This is online. You now have a hard copy of it. Dates are there for you to help plan what you're doing. So one final thing, anybody interested in hosting the Final Four, it's a wonderful opportunity. We've seen it in some great places. Those applications are due on January 26th, if you're interested. And while I'm here, I'll also say that as your team certs are due on the 9th, also your conference SOPs. So that determines how you do your rankings inside your league, whether you're doing a conference playoff, et cetera, all those things. So make sure your conference reps are getting together and discussing how that's going to go down. Are you playing home and home? Are you playing, one game, whatever?
Thanks, Willie. Thanks, Will.
Joe Alexander, the treasurer of the league, is not here. I'll be extremely brief to stay on time. Due statements usually go out, the first one prior to the season starting. There's usually sometime mid-season, another statement will go out, and then at end of season, final statement will go out. I don't have the financials with me. The league is solvent. We are in good financial shape. Thank you all for getting your dues in for 2022. And we'll look to getting statements out at start of season. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Chris Van Hatcher. Used to be a coach at Oregon Episcopal School, athletic director at Oregon Episcopal School, and I've sat on this board for a long time trying to help out. OSA update. You know, how do we become OSAA? We've been trying to do this over a number of years. Our first time we were trying to do it, the recession hit in 2008. We actually had enough numbers, and that just tanked it. So then we took some years off. We started the process again about 4 years ago, and in order to become OSA, we need to have 50 teams. That's the first thing, and I can tell you right now we have to have both male and female, because the OSA is not going to take us as just the boys lacrosse program. We have to have both. So we've over the years been working with the women, and actually had the president of the board about 4 years ago is really into the idea, because some of the women are not into the idea. While we follow all the OSA guidelines, the women's program have sort of picked and choose at times how they're going to follow their guidelines to best suit the way, particularly sometimes the club programs are being run. And we have pretty much stayed loyal to the OSA and in the way we run our program, with the whole concept of eventually, hopefully, going OSA. And plus the fact that, you know, it's a good situation to run programs like the football team is, or the baseball team, because you have less problems with other coaches going to the AD and saying, how's come, you know, the lacrosse program gets to do this, but we don't? Well, they're not OSAA. So that's one of the guidelines why we follow the OSA. But anyway, so first thing, we need 50 teams. About 4 years ago, we started the process again, and Paul and I went to a meeting and met with the OSA board, presented ourselves, and that was to go fully OSA at the time, even though we were short a couple of numbers of teams. And they decided that I think some other states had formed this emerging program, and so they got together and decided that they would do that for the state of Oregon. And what an emerging program is, and it's up here, is it's a 2-year plan for sport, and you still have to be accepted by the OSA. You got to present, and they vote on it. You become an emerging program, and the concept is that hopefully, if you do that, some of the other schools in the state will get together and say, oh, you know, it looks like this might happen. We should start thinking about having a lacrosse team at our school, because it's a 2-year program, but after 2 years, if you don't have 50 teams, you're not even eligible to be considered to be OSAA. They could extend you another 2-year period, or they could also say, you know, I'm sorry, we're not going to extend you. You're still just at your club level where we are right now. So obviously COVID hit after we met with them, and we're headed that direction. And then we've had some number decline. We're actually down to 43 teams right now. So those things said, we've kind of put it on you know, we're still there. We still talk to OSA a lot. Things that we need to do is keep working with the women. They, of course, have a new president, and got to get them on board. We need to get our numbers up closer to 50 so that we can have a chance at getting 50 teams and becoming OSA. So that's where we are right now. You know, it's a little frustrating because obviously when we started to do this in 2008, we looked really good. We had 51 teams. You know, we don't have issues because we have so many people come to our state championship game and we make money that, you know, OSA wouldn't even consider us if we didn't make money. You know, because they don't want to take on another sport that is losing money and they're going to have to pay for things. So we're in a good situation that way. I think they would love to have us. We just need to get up to 50 teams because they're not going to bend on that. I've talked to Peter Weber on that situation, and you have to have 50 teams. So the whole conversation about growing the sport within and the help of both the youth program and the high school program becomes very important so that we can get closer to 50 teams. Because I think if we're at 47, there's some programs that will come along. I am so old that I was the president of the soccer when soccer went OSAA, and it is the last sport that went OSAA, and this is many years ago. And I was president of the soccer when that happened, so I know the process. That took some time to do too, and of course, everybody's like, we'll never play soccer, we'll never do this, and you look at soccer now, and it's in every division. So there are 27 states, I believe, are fully functional in their state, and so it's over half the states now have lacrosse. So, and there's some on the West Coast. So we just need to keep going, and I think the biggest thing is getting our numbers. Any questions about that? You know, the main thing is to let you know that we're still working on it. You know, we think that if we could go OSA, obviously a lot of things change for us. We're much more visible than we are right now. Last thing I'll just say is 2 years ago, I think it was 19, maybe? Yeah, we had an OSA rep come to the state championship game, sat with me and watched the games, and they were totally impressed with what we were doing. It was you know, a huge crowd at Lake Oswego, so like I said, they're definitely interested. I've talked to Peter Weber, they're interested, but we've got to get our numbers up. So we'll just got to keep working on that, guys. Thanks. Yes?
Yeah, so when this was going on, so the school superintendent in Burns was on the executive committee for OSAA. And after you guys had done your presentations, he called me into his office and he wanted to talk about it, about the potential. And I was like, okay. But one of the things that his concern was is actually distribution. Where's lacrosse located? How do you get these other schools in outlying areas? How do you do it? And he's moved on, but that was one of the things that he brought up that their exec committee had concerns about is actually not distributed across the state. How do you do it? How do you get some of these other communities to start buying in to the game? You know, because travel's going to be a huge issue. Sucks in Oregon, but and then coming up with a strategy, like a 4-year strategy or 5-year strategy, to start picking regions of the state. Where do you want to go? Like Medford, Klamath, you know, the I-84 corridor. That'd be a great place to have a league, right? And then more expansion in Central Eastern Oregon. There's opportunities there. There's got to be a strategy to do it. You know, road to game's a great statement. But what does it mean?
And I will say that the board, we've been talking more and more on this subject and working towards that. And I would only say that having the experience of soccer, it was in the same boat. It was all, you know, around the Portland area, you know, so, and I think that's huge to, at least I feel it is, to express what soccer was when I was doing this before and what soccer has become, and lacrosse could become the same way. So, but we are talking about as a board to grow the sport. Anything else? All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chris. Will Harris again. I suppose I should say a lot of familiar faces out there, but some I don't know. I spent 20 years at Lincoln High School. I founded that program. I've been in this league for a long time. A lot of program development. I'm happy to serve with a bunch of guys that also have extensive program development experience at pretty successful programs. So just to dovetail what we're talking about here, to wrap this up, we know that we've been through pretty disruptive time with COVID. I also know that actually some of our programs were having tough times before COVID, right? We talk about growth and expansion, but we also need to talk about how we stabilize. And we have requests from many of you to co-op, and we hear that numbers are hard and difficult, and participation is questionable. We need to start thinking about that and sharing knowledge together. So as we think about how we grow the game, to Rick's point, we need to start hearing from you a little bit more consistently about what you're facing in your programs. And so we want to put out a survey here to give us some base knowledge about what are the challenges you guys are facing in your programs. Where are the places that a league such as ours, with extensive experience both on the coaching staff and here on the board, can do to help so we can stabilize our programs as we look to grow. So you're going to be seeing Ken and I working on this. We have a short survey we're going to send out. Shouldn't take you very long to fill out. We'd love it if head coach and parent administrator or most involved parent filled it out. I would try to capture some data that could lead us to some best practices about program development so that we can share some of the successes more widely so that we can get out into Eastern Oregon or the I-84 corridor. We're looking at 3 areas to try to initially get some feedback. One is, how engaged are you and is the school with you? Your host school engagement. I think it's important that our programs are part of their high school environment and community and not exterior to it. Your program governance and continuity. I've seen in the 20 years here, I've seen a lot of faces that are no longer in this room. A lot of us who aren't coaching anymore, and all the young new faces. But how are our programs dealing with continuity, right? I want to hear some feedback from you guys as to the challenges you may be facing on that. And then if we're going to talk about growing the game, we need to talk about youth development. And in some areas, we've got extensive youth development resources, processes, leagues. Maybe in others we don't. So I've been a big proponent and successful at having a vertically integrated program. That's not what all of you experience, not what all of you have. So I'd love to hear back from you guys. What are the challenges you face in that? What are your successes? What do you need? And in the end, what we want to hear back as a board is, what are the things that the league can do for you? When we talk about the OHSLA, what does it mean to you? What is your vision of what the OHSLA does for itself, for the league, for Oregon, and for your program? And that's just our bit and our commitment to you about creating a better interaction, a better experience for your players, a better experience for you, growing the game of lacrosse here in the state of Oregon, respecting the creator's game and the gift that we've been given, all those things, so that we can be better servants here as a board for you guys in developing that league in which you can thrive. But we need that information back from you to start. So we'll send that out. We'll give you some time to fill it out. Hopefully it won't take too long. We'll pester you a little bit about filling it out. And my goal would be that one of us, or I'll reach back out to some of you and have a more in-depth conversation. Some of those will be veterans, some of those will be new guys, some of those will be programs that are successful, and some will be programs that are struggling. And we'll try to get a really deeper sense of where we're at as a league, what we need to do going forward, what are the questions we want answered and discussed at places like this, so that we can have a common view of where we're going as a league and the things it's going to take to get there. So with that, I don't know if somebody's going to wrap up our activities for the day. Paul, if you would.
Thanks, Will. We got to keep them happy. This pretty much wraps it up with one last item on the agenda, and it's questions and hopeful answers. Kind of opening up, following Will's lead, what you all need from us. So questions, just opening it up, and if we don't have the answers, we will definitely get the answers.
I got a question real quick. I don't need that. I talk loud enough. Oh, okay. So one of the struggles we're having down in the Eugene area is obviously Thurston's no more. We think they're going to have a JV team, but we're trying to figure out what to do with their players. Because South Eugene and Sheldon are the two closest teams to Thurston. I mean, they're almost identically in distance. Thurston's we think they're gonna have a JV team. What do we do with their varsity kids? Do we tell them that they've got to play JV? Do we tell them, is there an option to go to Sheldon or Thurston or South? How do we manage that? Because it's tricky right now. We got kids and parents reaching out to both Josh and I, and we're confused.
Good question. We deal with that a lot, and I guess we can answer that offline specifically with the schools down in the Eugene area yourselves. There are things within our SOPs that open us up to hopefully take care of that issue. The issue of where do student athletes go if their school does not have a operating team.
Yeah, I read through it, and it's basically geographical distance.
Exactly.
But when you got two schools that are almost identical geographical distance,
There are 0.2 mile difference between the distance between South Eugene and Thurston and South Eugene, and Thurston and Sheldon.
right?
Dealing with growth of the league, we're going to be more lenient than the SOPs call for in helping issues like that, situations like that.
So piggybacking on that question, I've read the SOPs about the geographical distance. I haven't seen a application process for a player that wants to play at another school in this situation. Is that up to individual conferences?
Look into, again, the website under documents, and there will be a what's our document called? Co-op agreement, and that's per student athlete and also per school. And that's our tool that we have at this moment. It's definitely something that the league leadership is looking into on how to make it easier for student athletes, for teams, and for the league to navigate that. Rick?
So first off, individual players cannot form, sign and, we don't have free agency, and the form isn't a substitute for free agency. What we also are focused on is we don't want the co-op agreement to be a crutch to not developing and growing the league. So what we've experienced over the years was what is those schools, the host school or the B school, the one that needs that host school to remain viable, what is that former group, what is that community doing to grow the program? Because the co-ops are intended to give some time to build capacity, not be a substitute for doing that. So probably the best way to answer the question or leave it today is let's get a meeting between the boards and the league. And also, Tanner, where are you at? I want to see you after the meeting quickly to talk about, because we've had this issue with Tigard and some other schools. What we don't want to do any longer is just have all these one-off conversations. So we want to get the league board, the commissioners together with the individual parent boards and the coach to figure this out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky deal, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't quite know how many varsity kids at Thurston. We think about a half dozen.
Yeah.
And I don't want all half dozen at Sheldon.
Yeah.
And Josh has got good numbers. I don't think he wants all half dozen there. So how do we split that up so it's fair to the kids, fair to the team, and it makes sense, right? So
Right.
and we really don't want Thurston to drop.
Right.
I mean,
So
they've been around since '03.
So the critical thing is, what can Thurston do
Right.
to build capacity,
Right.
as opposed to just give more players to the other schools?
Agreed.
So, yeah, let's work on that.
Roger that.
But thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah,
And I just want to give a shout out to Aloha Southridge folks. They gave us some communication earlier this year that talks about how they can break apart. The goal is to break apart after 2 years and not be one program because two schools have low numbers.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. I'll just wrap it up with, don't be bashful. Take some of the sandwiches and beverages with you. If there are any teams that have asked for help financially on getting here, let me know. We do have funds available to help defray costs. Again, thank you all for taking and making the time for starting the 2023 season. We look forward to seeing you all on the field, putting out a positive and good product for 2023. And as I've stated, as the other commissioners have stated, along with Tom Hoffert, we're here to help and to grow the sport. Please feel free to get in contact with us, and look forward to a very positive 2023 season. Again, thank you all for attending today.